I cannot stress for you enough to let go of that crutch. Welcome. This is What's Next, and I am Halo Eden Gray. So today I want to talk about romanization. I've seen other videos about romanization, but I always feel like they're kind of leaving out the things that for me I really hate about it. So I wanted to make a video about those things. Romanization super duper sucks. So when I first started learning Korean, how I got into it was that I really wanted to learn the words to The Truth Untold by BTS, but I couldn't hear what they were saying in that song at all. I didn't even know what I was supposed to try to kind of hear. It really didn't sound like anything. And so I decided to look up the lyrics, and of course, you find the Korean lyrics and you're like, I don't know what that says. I don't know what these weird shapes are. What are these symbols? So then you find the Romanized lyrics, and those letters, well, hey, I recognize these letters. These are an English alphabet. Except for, I don't understand how you read this. Like, those two letters combined don't even make a sound that I'm familiar with. So, romanization very early on gave me a headache. I felt like it was better to just try to figure it out phonetically, but like romanization, no. So when I decided to learn Korean, I was like, oh no, do I need to learn romanization? I don't know. I felt like it was like taking on like another language on top of Korean. Basically, I hated romanization early. I hated looking at letters that look familiar to me, but were put together in ways that don't make any kind of sense to me. It just wasn't useful. It's like learning a second language on top of Korean, except for that language is not of any use because no one speaks romanization. Okay, so the thing about romanization, what I found out since I started learning Korean, is that there are 3 main variations of romanization, and none of those 3 ways are official. And that means from resource to resource, whether it's website to app to instructional video, it could be different. Like the same word could be romanized differently. And depending on how it's romanized, it may give you a different idea of how it's pronounced. Like in most of the romanization I see, something like a Deegan, it looks kind of like this. Looks like a C to me, a capital C. In most of the romanization I've seen, it's romanized as a D. It actually has a sound between a D and a T. And because of that, in other romanization, it's romanized as a T. Well, those letters have very real meaning to me as an English speaker. I want to pronounce them a certain way, which means I'm getting farther away from how it's actually pronounced in Korean. It's just very not helpful. It just throws you off. 3 different types of romanization that you have to try to familiarize yourself with in order to understand from one resource to the next. And it's not like you get to choose, and you know what I'm saying? None of them are official. Maybe if there was an official one, then it would be more beneficial. But with anybody putting out Korean resources and being able to choose any one of those 3, or maybe even creating another one, it's just not very useful. It doesn't really help. You'll end up pronouncing things wrong down the line, or being confused as to what is this word. It kind of sounds like this word, but is it a different word? So when I started learning Korean, I decided to make my own variation of romanization. I basically just wanted a trigger for what each letter in Hangul sounds like. So I needed to know that a Deegan makes a sound between a D and a T, and I needed something, to reference it to. So I made my own romanization, but whether you make your own or whether you use what's already out there, you're going to run into the same problem. First being, when I made my romanization, I didn't know any sound change rules. I didn't even know that was a thing. I learned it very quickly after, but that meant I had to go back to anything I had written down, and using this romanization, I had to go back and account for sound change rules. Luckily, because I had made it myself, I could do that. But you can't do that in your translation app. You can't do that on a website. You just have to deal with what's there. And what I found is often the romanization doesn't account for the sound change rules, which means something like a double shiyut, okay? A shiyut kind of looks like this, and it makes a sound like an S, okay? So when that's at the bottom of a syllable block, it sounds like a digan. That C looking symbol I talked about earlier, this sounds like a cross between the D and a T. So a double shiyut would also sound like a digan at the bottom of a syllable block. But in some websites, or even I know for a fact, my translation app, if you put in a word like ita, right? It will have a double shiyut at the bottom, right? But it will be romanized as two S's. So I have to look at what is ISS and know that it's pronounced like it. As an English speaker, that's just too confusing. This isn't pronounced like a T. It's pronounced like an S. And then sometimes you'll see it. Obviously, you'll see a shiyut, and it's not at the bottom of the syllable block, so it's pronounced like an S. Or you'll see it next to the vowel E, and it's pronounced like sh, becomes she. But none of that is accounted for in the romanization. So you don't get SHI or SHE, you'll get SI, and you have to look at SI and say she. Now, whether you're an English speaker or a Spanish speaker, that's not how SI is pronounced. Okay, you have to look at ISS, and you want to go is, but you need to know that it's pronounced it. But then you might see somewhere else where it is. Like, that's the silliness of it. It doesn't account for those rules. So sometimes what you're looking at just really won't represent what you need to say in any kind of way whatsoever. And I do think that romanization could be better at representing what the sounds are, but it just doesn't. And I think sound change rules is one of the major hiccups in that. Another thing that I think that causes this kind of inadequate representation is the alphabet that romanization is using. Okay, so you take something like the letter A in English, it could be pronounced as I, or it could be pronounced as A, or sometimes it doesn't have a sound at all in a word. Well, in Korean, that same romanization, that A, right, is always going to be pronounced as I. It's not ever going to be A. It's always going to be I. And every time you see an E, where in English could be E, could be A, could be silent, it's always going to be A. And if you see an I, it's going to be E. So to us, those letters, depending on what's beside them, can sound differently. Depending on the word or whatever, it will affect how those letters sound. But in Korean, it will always be I. It will always be A. It will always be E. And so once you get into romanization, it kind of just paints itself into a corner, I guess I would say, because every time it puts an A there, that sound has to be I, even though for an English speaker, it might be next to a letter that makes us want to say A. So it's a lot of looking at it and trying to adjust your thinking. And at the same time, I continue to read in English any other time. So it's like I have to switch back and forth between reading this the way an English speaker would read it and then reading it like romanization. It's just easier for me to see it in English. To see it in Korean and then, know, oh, this letter is pronounced I every time. The next thing that I found interesting, right? So I'm going to try to show you this on camera. So there's a singer, Korean singer. She sings Gashina. Her name is Sunmi. I guess Sunmi. I guess that's right. Maybe it's Sunmi. I don't know. I apologize. And this is how her name is written. This is romanization. When you see Korean names like this is romanization. So it's Sunmi. So as an English speaker, I would say Sunmi, because S-U-N is sun. We have a word for the big thing in the sky that glows during the day, and that's the sun. All right. So it's Sunmi. All right. But a lot of times when you see a U in a word, it's actually U. So it might be Sunmi. Okay? Sunmi or Sunmi. These two letters. This one is kind of makes like a sound. So that's how you get like sun. This one makes a U sound. So that's how you get sun. Sunmi. Sun. Okay. You need to know all three of those things. The name is written like that. This is U. This is the romanization. This is how her name is written in Korean. Okay. So judging by that particular spelling, that letter there, that's typically romanized as an O. That would make her name Sunmi. Not Sunmi, not Sunni, Sunmi. That's the problem with romanization. And that's just somebody's name. You're looking at Sunmi and you're supposed to say Sunmi. Now, romanization could account for the sound here. But a lot of times it just doesn't. And that's just reality. And I've seen that with those particular letters, the U, that one, the O, being romanized differently depending on where I'm looking, and then that affecting how the sound, how it inevitably sounds, how you inevitably pronounce it. So it could account for, the sounds in the Korean language, but it often does not. So that's another point where it's just like, it's useless. It could be helpful, but it's really useless. You're really just looking at the wrong way to pronounce something. You're really sitting there as an English speaker or even a Spanish speaker and trying to look at words, letters that you recognize, and then pronounce them in ways that you wouldn't as an English speaker or as a Spanish speaker. Another thing that I noticed, and this is really important, and I don't know if it was just like a me thing or if it may be the case for anyone else. So I had a lot of trouble. I think I live in fear of just not being able to hear Korean, because I can't adequately explain what that was like, but initially I didn't hear any kind of sound I could recreate. It was, I don't know, I would say it's the equivalent of white noise. It just didn't sound like anything to me, and I could not reproduce it at all. So I had spent a month learning Korean, and I had learned Hangul, I learned sound change rules, I learned basic grammar, and I actually had thought at that point that I had spent 2 months. I realized later that it had only been a month, so maybe that added to my frustration. But I got to the point where I was conjugating verbs, and it dawned on me, and then maybe I'll talk about this in another video in the future, but I don't really need to know how to conjugate verbs. No one's testing me. I can really just look up the word. So I was like, this is kind of boring. I really want to know how to say basic things. Hi, how are you? What is your name? My name is blah, blah, blah. Because that's what my mama named me. She named me blah, blah, blah. That's real. Okay, I had to change it. I changed it to Halo because I was like, Mom, this is messed up. Why would you name me blah, blah, blah? You're setting me up for failure in life. Anyways, let's move on. Okay, so I wanted to say basic things like, how are you? What is your name? How old are you? What kind of things do you like? I wanted to be able to say thank you for blah, 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 whatever it is. And so I decided to try to figure out how to say those specific type things in a basic conversation. And so I was looking up videos in Korean, basic conversations in Korean. And I was going to listen to it, try to practice those things. There we go from there. And so I found a video, one of those shadowing videos where, you know, they say the phrase in Korean to give you time to repeat it or whatever. One of those videos. And it said specifically that it was going to say it slow, then say it a little bit faster, and then say it normal speed. So I hit play. It got to the first thing, and I don't even remember what the first thing was, but it said it slow the first time, and I didn't hear anything. I was like, I don't even know. I didn't hear anything. So it was a very like frustrating feeling, because then how could I repeat it back when I honestly didn't even hear a sound? And so the way the screen was set up, because it was a YouTube video, it wasn't, you know, a recording. The way it was set up was that it would have the Romanization, then it would have the Hangul, and then it would have the English translation, or those may be flipped in a way, but something along those lines. It would have all three of those things on the screen. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at it, and the voice says it, and then I'm like, no. Run it back. Do it again. No. Nope, I heard nothing. I heard nothing. And so what I ended up doing was closing my eyes. And when I closed my eyes, I was able to hear it better, and I was able to repeat it back. This is my theory on that. So I had two things coming into my brain at the same time, very similar type of information coming into my brain. They're both a language, right? But one of them I understand really well. That's English. Get English. Understand it. All the letters. Yes. The other one being Korean, which at that point, even now, I don't understand it as well as I understand English. So to have these two things being kind of delivered to my brain at the same time, and I understand one really well and I don't really understand the other one at all, it means my brain would just block it out. It's like how they say, I don't know, I've heard this, like, you can always see your nose, but your brain just blocks it out as irrelevant information, so you're not constantly looking at your nose all day. Okay, same thing kind of here. My brain just blocked out the Korean as being just irrelevant, because even if I focused all my attention on it, I still wouldn't understand it. So when I was looking at the screen, I see the English there, and I see the Romanization. Well, the English I completely understand. The Romanization looks like I should understand it. The Hangul doesn't look like anything I should understand. And then she's speaking in Korean, and I'm supposed to be repeating. My brain just bumps it out and goes, you know what these two things are, kind of. So who needs that third thing that isn't going to help you at all in any kind of way? So closing my eyes blocked out the English and allowed me to just hear the Korean. The other thing about that too, so the thing about that as well is just that the Romanization is what kind of messes you up when it comes to pronunciation as well, in terms of just trying to get the sounds down. If you're supposed to be listening to how it sounds and you're instead looking at Romanization, your brain is going to immediately go to the Romanization because it looks familiar. But then once you focus in on the Romanization, you're going to be like, hold up. No. I don't know what sound those two letters make together. So, and then while you're still trying to figure that out, you've now missed what you were supposed to be listening to. Same with reading it. It's like you've learned Hangul at that point, and you know what these sound like, you know what they represent. What is the point of them looking at the Romanization? To this day, I still cannot read the Romanization. I will sit there and be like, I have no idea what that says. Just show me the Hangul. I can pronounce that. And if I can't pronounce it by looking at the Hangul, because there's still certain things that I struggle with. I still struggle with certain things, but if I struggle with it, then I'd rather just put the word into like my translation app or into even my flashcard app. They both have read aloud buttons. That's if I can't just, find some audio clip of someone actually saying whatever word it is I'm trying to say. I have their, I can resort to just using my translation app or my flashcard app or my vocabulary app and just keep hitting the read aloud button and just trying to say it like they're saying it. That's a whole lot easier than trying to figure it out using romanization, because romanization super duper sucks. The other thing that I was going to point out too, 2 different English speakers can have 2 different ideas of what the same word is actually pronounced like. So how do you know that the choice that you're making is the correct one without just going and listening to the word? And if you're going to listen to the word, lose the romanization. I cannot stress for you enough to let go of that crutch. Another reason you want to get rid of it, let go of it, is a lot of instructors, especially the Korean ones in like the, online resources, anything, do not care when it comes to romanization. Like they don't care. Either it's just completely absent from their resources. Romanization is hurting you. It's better if it's not there. If you're looking at a resource with romanization, it's a little, honestly, it's more painful to look at, and it's just doing a disservice to you. If you start relying on that, you're not really adequately pronouncing things correctly. So it's better just to listen to how it's said. Familiarize the sounds. But the funniest thing was, I was watching an instructional video, and I don't remember who it was, but it was either, I feel like, and I could be wrong, it was either Korean Class 101 or it was Korean Honey. And given who's in those videos, the fact that I have no idea which one it was is just troubling, because it was either a woman or it was a guy. Like, it's not like they look alike and they're not even the same gender, but for some odd reason, I am not sure which video I was looking at. I don't remember. I've seen so many, and this is a while ago, and I forgot a long time ago whose video it was. I want to say it was Korean Class 101. I'm pulled more in that way, but I'm probably wrong. Point was, so they gave a phrase, and whatever the phrase was, the first letter started with like a hue, right? Which is romanized as an H. Okay. But in the video, the romanization that they provided for that word started with an M. There's no point where you'll see a hue and pronounce it like a M at the beginning of a sentence. I honestly think that like the instructors don't care, especially like the Korean instructors, because I don't think they use romanization at all for any reason. So I've even seen an instructional video where a girl was talking about a lot of Koreans don't even know what romanization is or know how to use it or pronounce it correctly. So they don't need it because they can just read the Korean instead. They can just read the Hangul. So I think sometimes they just get on those videos and just type whatever. And so what you're looking at may have really zero bearing on what you're hearing. So it's just something to keep in mind. Sometimes it's absent. Sometimes it is there, but it is incorrect. And then just from resource to resource, it might be a different variation of it. And so the romanization may not account for sound change rules, or it may romanize one letter a certain way that you don't normally see romanized that way. So I think it's in your best interest not to hang on to romanization. You will need it in the beginning, so don't feel bad about it. Like, you will need it. Like, you need some sort of reference, some sort of reminder. But I think you could probably get through all of Hangul. I've seen somewhere where someone said maybe 3 hours. I feel like you can familiarize yourself with all the letters of Hangul in like 20 minutes, but maybe that's too soon. So let's go with 3 hours. You can do it in like 3 hours. I think it does take a little bit longer for you to really have a grasp on it, to where like you see the letter and you immediately know. I think for a while you might have to, I know for me, for a little bit, I had to go back to my notes and go, oh, okay, yeah. Especially when it came to combined vowels, I would instantly forget, and I'd be like, I have no idea. Is that why? Or is it way? Is it whoa? I don't know. And so I had to go back and look at them again and see, oh, okay, that's what this one is. Until I felt more confident and I could easily recognize them by the combination of vowels that they use. So you'll need it in the beginning. Don't feel bad about that. But as soon as you can, get rid of the romanization. Do not use it as a crutch. And don't use it to type online. I can't stand it. It's like, it bothers me so much. I'll be in like, various communities, and someone will post a question and I heard this word used, blah, blah, blah. And they'll write it in romanization instead of writing it in just Hangul. And I'm just sitting there like, no, I'm not reading that. I don't even know what the hell that says. No. Like, it gives me a headache. And I know that's a personal preference, but I stand by it. It gives me a headache. I don't know what you're writing. Please just write it in Hangul. I do understand that sometimes maybe you don't have access to a Korean keyboard or whatever. I mean, I have it on my phone, but I know when I get on my computer, I don't have it, and that can make things difficult. And I get that, and I try to be understanding, but even then, I will copy and paste like from a website or something, because I cannot with romanization. It is a headache. I don't even, and because there's 3 different ones, the letters you use may just not be familiar to people reading it. They might be like, I don't understand. Why is this? And that's one of the things too, why it can't like really account for sound change rules, because so many letters, if they're at the bottom of a syllable block, are actually pronounced like a D again, which is sound between a T or a D, and will be romanized with either a T or a D. Right? And so it could be very confusing if you have what is a very real thing, where it's the same like starting letters, but the letter on the bottom is one of those is pronounced like a D. And so they would be romanized exactly the same if it accounted for the sound change rule. But they mean 2 different things. Get past using romanization and just instead just use actually listening to it. You'll be better for it. Your Korean will be better for it. So for the share with the class portion of this video, what's your favorite song right now in your target language? For me, what is my favorite? I Just Wanna by Palo Alto. That's hard. Maybe that one. I feel like I listen to that one a lot. But also The Greatest by Palo Alto is also really high on my list. A lot of his songs are really high on my list, so I don't know. I still listen to Till I Die a lot. And I also still listen to Push Me. And both of those are by PH1. So those songs are very high on my list right now. And then EXO, Monster, is probably my favorite K-pop song. And I just really don't have like this extensive knowledge of K-pop to not be able to pick one. That's probably my favorite K-pop song thus far. But yeah, those are nice. Ooh, But this one isn't in my target language, so there's that. Katie just did a new song called Echo, and I absolutely love Katie's voice. But her songs are in English, but she is a Korean singer. Oh, and I've been listening to Drunken Tiger, and I really like that song, Party in the Booth. That song I'm obsessed with. Anyways, go ahead, drop your favorite song in your target language. I don't care if you're learning Korean or learning some other language, but enjoy the rest of your day. Stay healthy, and what's next?